On this Wednesday night, Israel and Gaza on the brink of war. Dozens are dead as rockets rain down and violence spreads to the streets.
The most important thing now is for all sides to cease the violence.
Who has the authority to intervene and de-escalate the conflict? Mixing it up, can pairing different COVID-19 vaccines create a stronger immune response?
Now fingers crossed.
A preliminary study Canada is closely watching. Plus, is it the end of the line for Enbridge's Line 5? Michigan's deadline to turn off the pipe arrives. And this rocks. The NASA spacecraft on its way home from an asteroid with a payload of deep space samples.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. The fighting between Israel and Gaza is escalating tonight. In a conflict that has flared up over decades, this is the worst violence in years. The UN is warning it could escalate into a full-scale war. Israel bombed another high-rise in Gaza, sending warnings before it leveled that 14-story building on the busiest shopping street in Gaza. Top commanders from Hamas and Islamic Jihad were killed, and Hamas is now calling for a full-scale intifada or uprising. The death toll on both sides is rising. Israeli airstrikes have killed at least 65 people in Gaza, according to the health ministry there, including 16 children. And a fierce barrage of rockets from Gaza has killed 7 Israelis, including a child and a soldier. The U.S. hasn't been actively engaged so far, but tonight President Joe Biden said he has spoken to Israel's Prime Minister and said that he expects the violence will end sooner rather than later. Eric Sorensen has our top story tonight.
It is the heaviest fighting in years, and militarily it is one-sided. Israel's precision airstrikes have destroyed the offices of Hamas leaders in Gaza, and they have killed top Hamas commanders. Inevitably, civilians, dozens so far, have also been killed. Meantime, rockets fired from Gaza by Hamas are less accurate and often intercepted, but have killed some Israelis while raining hundreds of missiles down, mostly on Tel Aviv. Israel's Prime Minister has vowed to increase Israeli airstrikes. Benjamin Netanyahu declared today, "We'll hit them like they've never dreamed possible." The fighting was sparked by recent unrest where Jewish settlers tried to take over Arab-controlled neighborhoods, part of the decades-long dispute over expansion of Israeli settlements. This area in East Jerusalem is considered among the holiest territory by both Israelis and Palestinians. At recent protests, a senior Hamas leader vowed not to leave Palestinians to face the Israelis alone.
Jerusalem is a powder keg for any kind of immediate conflict.
This academic says peace in this area will require compromise and new leadership on both sides.
There have to be leaders that come to power that are interested in solving the conflict, which will inevitably involve a two-state solution.
But the political backdrop is highly unstable. There is a power struggle for leadership among the Palestinians. While Israel's Netanyahu has failed to form a government, opposition parties are closer to toppling him from power. And the international backdrop has also changed. After U.S. President Trump's total support for Israel, Washington, under President Joe Biden, is only now engaging diplomatically, adopting a more traditional stance.
Israel has a right to defend itself. Palestinians have a right to live in safety and security. And the most important thing going forward now is to take down the violence.
To that end, Washington is sending a top official to meet with Palestinian and Israeli leaders.
Many governments don't want to deal with it, right? It is a fault line for instability in the region. And the United States really can't ignore it.
The Middle East has confounded peacemakers for generations, and the worry now is that the conflict may spread to the entire region, pushing the prospect for peace even further into the future. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
For Palestinians living in Jerusalem, the latest eruption of violence is devastating and familiar. Tonight, we're getting a picture of what life is like for them in a city that is home to some of the holiest sites in the world and where people of different faiths have lived, worked, and prayed for generations. Freelance reporter Nusa Musleh spoke to people about what's inflamed the anger.
One of the major developments during this year's holy month of Ramadan in the old city of Jerusalem was Israeli ban of Palestinian presence inside the mosque and outside of it.
We are very angry. It's a very bad thing to do for Muslims in last days of Ramadan, of our holy month, in our holy place.
To Muslims residing here, Al-Aqsa Mosque is central to their well-being and personal dignity.
For us, Al-Aqsa Mosque is our life, our future, and it's part of our faith and religion. It is something that should not be touchable.
In nearby Sheikh Jarrah, 28 families are brooding over the fate of eviction from their homes of 61 years, built on land which the Jordanian regime has provided for them when they became refugees in 1948.
I lived in this house 65 years, and they want to take me from here to throw me to the street, me and my children and my wife and my brother and my grandchildren. That's not easy, you know.
How do we advance? How do we go forward? How do we resolve outstanding issues that need to be resolved? And if this doesn't come, then it's going to recur again and again and again.
The continued frustration of Palestinians makes them desperate to see change.
Either the occupation will overwhelm the whole country or liberation will take place, either us or them.
However, when a Palestinian woman is challenged about the negative consequences of the rockets from Gaza hurting innocent civilians in Israel, she justifies this behavior.
We are in Arabic saying, who is knocking the door, he is received the answer.
Nusa Musleh, Global News, Jerusalem.
Now to the pandemic and the continuing turmoil over the future of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. More provinces are now restricting its use because of both supply and safety concerns. Today, Nova Scotia announced it is halting the use of AstraZeneca as a first dose because of the risk of rare but serious blood clots.
The decision to pause the use of AstraZeneca is based on caution, science, and the availability of alternative mRNA vaccines from Pfizer and Moderna.
British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Newfoundland and Labrador have also stopped offering AstraZeneca as a first dose. Those provinces gave varying reasons, from ongoing evidence to supply issues. Most of the COVID vaccines in Canada right now are mRNA vaccines from Pfizer and Moderna, but more AstraZeneca is on the way. The federal government says it expects 655,000 doses from COVAX to be distributed next week. More than 250,000 of those are earmarked for Ontario. It's not clear, though, when or if Ontario will use them. The Health Minister, Christine Elliott, said today the government is waiting for a safety review before deciding what to do. That means there is a chance some of the vaccines could expire.
We don't expect that there will be any or perhaps just a few doses that may expire. However, this is out of an abundance of caution because the safety and well-being of the people of Ontario has to be our top priority.
One potential solution to the concerns over AstraZeneca is to mix doses so that people who got AstraZeneca as their first shot could get a different vaccine as their second. Research is still underway into whether mixing doses is a good approach. Tonight, there are some promising new early findings from a study in the UK. Crystal Goomansingh has the details.
Just as vaccines are becoming routine, a potential new path to immunity.
Give you on a bit of 12 tonight.
The study found no additional safety concerns from administering a first shot of Oxford AstraZeneca followed by a Pfizer booster, or the other way around, when compared to using 2 doses of the same vaccine. But more people who received mixed doses reported mild to moderate reactions after their second shot.
And then you're done.
Infectious disease specialist Dr. Gerald Evans says that's a good sign.
So one of the things it tells us in a way is that there may be a more robust immune response happening with mixing the vaccines.
It's an interpretation that is widely supported and, if accurate, would give countries, including Canada, vaccine flexibility. The chief trial investigator says it is too soon to say if mixing leads to enhanced immunity, but Matthew Snape says the current data can still influence decisions.
One of the things it's telling us is that, for example, you wouldn't want to immunise a ward full of nurses on the same day with a mixed schedule because you may have higher rates of absenteeism the next day.
Many Canadians are open to vaccine mixing, especially as provinces pause the use of AstraZeneca over concerns related to rare but serious blood clots or supply limitations.
I'll take what comes when it comes.
There's some intriguing preliminary evidence that suggests that it might be beneficial. And yeah, I don't mind a little experiment once in a while.
Any vaccine mixing that does happen would be an exception, not the rule, according to the scientific director of Ontario's COVID-19 Science Advisory Table.
What we need for that is real data, lab data, on how high the antibody levels will be and how the cellular immune reaction will be.
More results from the Oxford study are expected in the summer, and a Canadian study is in the final approval stages. Crystal Goomansingh, Global News, London.
The legal battle over Line 5. Coming up, the looming threat as a deadline to turn off the tap to a pipeline passes. Plus, simply the best. This year's inductees into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Americans are lining up for gas at hundreds of stations today. There is a shortage because of the cyber attack that led to the shutdown of a major pipeline, and that has led some to hoard fuel, filling up gas cans and huge barrels in the backs of pickup trucks, any container they can find. Some apparently even filled plastic bags, though it's not certain if these pictures are from today. Just in case, though, the U.S. Product Safety Commission tweeted this reminder: use only containers approved for fuel. The Colonial Pipeline is the largest refined fuel pipeline in the U.S., and late today the company said it has begun restarting operations late this afternoon. Gas pipelines are lifelines for people and industry, and the Canadian government